All right. Ready to unlock some serious life upgrades. We're talking tiny changes, huge EE results kind of stuff today as we take a deep dive into atomic habits.
This book, it's like a blueprint for building a better you, one small tweak at a time.
No magic wands or overnight transformations. It's about the power of consistency.
Exactly. It's about understanding how these small changes, when done consistently, can lead to some pretty remarkable results.
Like, remember that story about British cycling? Talk about a transformation.
Oh, absolutely. They went from being virtually unknown to completely dominating the cycling world. And you want to know the craziest part?
Okay, hit me. What's the secret sauce?
They did it by focusing on getting 1% better in every single thing they did.
1%? Seriously, that's it?
Yep, 1%. Tiny tweaks to their bikes, their training routines, even their sleep schedules. They obsessed over the details.
It sounds kind of crazy, right? Like, how much of a difference can those tiny changes really make?
Well, that's the power of compounding. Think about it like this. If you get 1% better each day for a year,
Okay, I'm following.
you end up 37 times better by the end of it. It's like a snowball effect. Small, consistent effort building on itself over time.
That's wild. It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It's not about these big, dramatic changes that fizzle out after a week. It's the small stuff, done consistently, that makes all the difference.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by these massive, hairy, audacious goals, maybe we should be asking ourselves,
What small changes can I make today that will get me closer to where I want to be tomorrow?
it's about focusing on the process, not just the end goal, right?
Exactly. It's about building a system that supports your goals, a system that makes those good habits inevitable.
So instead of saying, I need to lose 20 pounds, I should be asking.
What habits can I implement that will lead to sustainable weight loss?
It's about playing the long game.
Exactly. And that's where these 4 laws of behavior change come in. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
Clear's framework for making or breaking any habit, right?
Exactly. Think of them like the 4 pillars of lasting change. They're the secret to making those new habits stick and ditching the ones that are holding you back.
It's like that quote, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and assign them tasks. Teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. It's about making the process so enticing that you actually crave it, right?
Exactly. You nailed it. And that starts with making it obvious.
And when we say obvious, we're not just talking about, like, putting your running shoes by the door.
Right. We're talking about understanding the cues that trigger our habits and how even the smallest change in our environment can have a ripple effect on our behavior.
It's about those subtle nudges, right?
Exactly. For example, you've probably never given much thought to the location of your electricity meter.
I'll admit I haven't.
Well, one study found that something that simple could actually influence how much energy people used.
Wait, seriously, just from where the meter was located?
Yep. Homes that had their meters visible, say, in the hallway, actually consumed less electricity than those that had them tucked away in a basement or something.
So it's like just having that visual reminder, right? Seeing the meter made them more conscious of their energy usage?
Precisely. If we see something, it triggers a thought, and that thought can lead to action. It's all about those visual cues.
It reminds me of that study where they put stickers in urinals to reduce bathroom cleaning costs.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
It sounds ridiculous, but
It worked. The stickers, they acted like targets, encouraged people to, well, be more accurate, which led to less mess. It's those small tweaks that can have a surprisingly big impact.
it's fascinating how much our environment shapes our actions, isn't it?
Absolutely. But visual cues, they're just one piece of the puzzle.
Right. Clear also talks about making our desired habits more appealing, right? Like, how do we tap into that feel-good dopamine rush?
Okay, let's talk about that bag of chips you love. There's a reason you can't eat just one.
Oh, don't get me started. It's like they're engineered to be irresistible.
Well, they kind of are. The food industry, they've got this down to a science. They call them bliss points. The perfect combination of salt, sugar, and fat that sends our dopamine levels through the roof.
So they're basically hacking our brains.
Pretty much. But here's the good news. We can use that same principle to our advantage. We can associate our desired habits with things we already enjoy.
So, like, if I love listening to podcasts,
Listen while you walk or work out.
genius. Now, I want to talk about something that's always fascinated me, Social influence. We've all experienced it, right?
Yeah.
How we pick up habits, good or bad, from the people around us.
Oh, absolutely. We're wired for connection, and that includes mirroring the behaviors of those we admire or feel connected to.
Like that time everyone was making sourdough bread during the pandemic.
Exactly.
I swear it was like overnight, everyone was suddenly a master baker.
Well, Clear talks about the three groups we tend to imitate. The close, like our friends and family, many larger groups we identify with, and the powerful, those with status or influence.
It's like we're constantly taking cues from others, often without even realizing it.
It's true. And that's why surrounding yourself with people who embody the habits you want to cultivate can be so powerful. It's like positive peer pressure.
So we've made it obvious, we've made it attractive. Now how do we make those new habits stick? So we've made it obvious, we've made it attractive. Now how do we make those new habits stick?
That's where Make It Easy comes in.
Okay, so how do we do that?
We got to work with our brains, not against them, right?
Right.
Our brains, they're wired to conserve energy so naturally.
The path of least resistance wins out, right?
Yeah.
Especially when I'm tired or stressed, like my brain is hardwired for that.
Exactly. So we got to remove as much friction as possible from the process.
Yeah.
Cleary talks about the power of repetition, not perfection. He actually tells this great story about this photography professor, Jerry Yulesman.
Oh, yeah. The one where he divided his class into two groups.
Yes, exactly.
One focused on quantity, the other on quality. What happened? I'm always curious about how these things play out.
Well, the quantity group, they just churned out as many photos as they could. Didn't really matter if they were good or not, just focused on volume.
Okay, interesting approach. And the quality group.
They obsessed over creating, like, the single perfect masterpiece.
Makes sense. So who came out on top?
You might be surprised to hear this, but the quantity group actually produced, by far, the most impressive work by the end of the semester.
Really? I would have thought quality would win out every time.
You'd think, right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the quality group, they got so caught up in trying to be perfect that they barely created anything at all.
Ah, I see. Analysis paralysis. It's that saying, done is better than perfect, right? We get so caught up in this idea of the perfect outcome, and then we never even start.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of the 2-minute rule comes in.
Okay, the 2-minute rule. Remind me again how that one works.
Super simple. Break any new habit down into a 2-minute version.
Okay, I think I'm starting to remember. Give me an example.
Say you want to write a book, right?
Okay, yeah, I want to write a book.
Instead of overwhelming yourself with this massive goal of writing a whole book, you start by just committing to writing for 2 minutes a day.
2 minutes, that's it.
That's it. Sounds almost too easy, right?
Yeah, but I guess the idea is that once you've overcome that initial resistance, it's easier to keep going.
Exactly. You've tricked your brain into getting started.
Love it.
And the thing is, especially in the beginning, frequency trumps duration. It's not about spending hours at the gym. It's about just showing up consistently, even if it's just for a few minutes.
So no more excuses about not having enough time.
Exactly. Make it easy on yourself.
Okay, so we're making it easy, building those habits, but let's talk about that feeling we all get. You know, we're killing it with a new habit, feeling super motivated, and then, bam, we hit a wall, motivation just kind of disappears.
Ah, yes, the dreaded plateau. We've all been there.
It's like my brain is playing tricks on me.
Well, the thing is, our brains crave this instant gratification, right? Those quick hits of dopamine.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like my brain is a dopamine-seeking missile, constantly on the lookout for that next reward. And let's be honest, sometimes those rewards, they aren't exactly aligned with our long-term goals, right?
Exactly. It's so true. So we got to find ways to make our desired habits satisfying, rewarding in the present moment.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Clear tells this fascinating story about Stephen Luby, who was working on improving sanitation in Karachi, Pakistan.
Okay, interesting.
They're trying to get people to wash their hands more frequently to prevent the spread of disease.
Hand washing.
Yes.
Super important. We all know that.
Right. But they found that simply lecturing people about the importance of hygiene, well, it wasn't exactly a winning strategy.
Shocker. So what did they do?
They got creative. They introduced this new soap, but this one, it smelled amazing, and it left their hands feeling super soft.
Okay, so they made it enjoyable. Instead of just telling people what to do, they actually changed the experience of doing it.
Precisely.
That is so smart.
And it worked. Hand washing rates, they skyrocketed. And guess what?
What?
Rates of diarrhea and infections, they plummeted. It was a simple change, but it had a massive impact.
It's amazing how these tiny details can make all the difference. But how do we keep ourselves motivated beyond those initial rewards? Because you know novelty wears off eventually, right?
It does, and that's where things get really interesting.
How so?
Clear, he dives into some more advanced concepts in the later chapters. He argues that Our habits, they're actually expressions of our identity.
Okay, hold on. I need to wrap my head around that one. Habits as expressions of our identity. What does that even mean?
Okay, think about it this way. Every action you take, it's like a vote for the type of person you want to become.
Okay.
When you choose to go for that run, you're casting a vote for, I'm the type of person who takes care of their health.
I like that.
When you choose to learn a new skill, you're reinforcing this identity of, I'm a lifelong learner.
So it's not about waiting to feel like a different person before you start acting differently. It's about acting your way into a new identity.
Exactly. It's about proving it to yourself with small wins. And that can be incredibly motivating because it taps into something much deeper than just achieving a specific goal. It's about becoming the best version of yourself.
So we're crafting this new identity, but how do we keep that momentum going? You know, when things get tough, when life throws us a curveball and we just want to fall back into our old ways.
Well, Clear talks about this idea of the Goldilocks rule for motivation.
Okay, the Goldilocks rule. Refresh my memory.
You know the story, right? Not too hot, not too cold.
Just right. Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Exactly. The Goldilocks rule, it basically says we are most motivated when we're working on tasks that are just challenging enough.
So not too easy that we get bored, but not so hard that we just want to give up.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot.
Which I guess is different for everyone, right?
Absolutely. What might feel challenging to me could feel super easy to you, or vice versa.
It reminds me of all those times I've gone way too hard with a new workout routine. Like, I'm all gung-ho for like a week and then I just crash and burn.
We've all been there. We set these unrealistic expectations for ourselves and then life happens and we fall off track.
Yeah.
But imagine if, instead of aiming for some crazy ideal, we just focused on finding that sweet spot, that perfect balance of challenge and enjoyment.
It's like finding that groove where you're pushing yourself, but you're still having fun.
Exactly. And it doesn't feel like work when you hit that sweet spot. You're energized by the challenge. And Clear actually tells this great story about Steve Martin, the comedian.
Oh, I love Steve Martin. What's the story?
So he talks about how Steve Martin spent years, honing his craft, playing at small clubs, bombing on stage, constantly experimenting, trying new material, failing, trying again.
It wasn't some overnight success story.
No, not at all. He really had to push through years of struggle and uncertainty before he finally made it big.
It's a good reminder that even the people we see as wildly successful, they usually have this long road of trial and error behind them. It's so easy to forget that.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the highlight reel and forget about all the hard work that went into it.
Absolutely. But okay, how do we keep going when it feels like we're not making progress? When that initial excitement wears off and we just feel stuck?
Well, one thing Clear talks about is this idea of variable rewards. Our brains, they love novelty, right?
Oh, tell me about it. I'm a sucker for anything new and shiny.
Right. Well, think about slot machines.
Okay.
Why do you think people get so hooked on them?
Because they're hoping to win big.
Exactly. It's that thrill of the unknown, that chance of winning big that keeps people coming back for more.
It's kind of scary how well those casinos understand our brains.
They do, don't they? But here's the thing. We can use that same principle to our advantage when it comes to building good habits.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Instead of giving yourself the same reward every time you complete a task, try mixing it up. Keep your brain guessing.
So one day it's like a relaxing bath. The next day it's listening to my favorite podcasts. And another day it's a delicious, healthy meal.
Exactly. Keep it fresh. Keep it fun.
I like it. It's all about keeping things interesting, right?
Exactly. Now remember, building good habits, it's not just about adding new things to our lives.
It's also about breaking those bad habits, the ones that are holding us back.
Exactly. Sometimes we got to do a little subtracting too.
Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of those bad habits, they're so ingrained, so much a part of our routine.
It can feel daunting, but remember those 4 laws of behavior change.
Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
They work in reverse too.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Just like we can make good habits obvious, we can make those bad habits invisible.
So if I'm constantly tempted by that bag of chips in the pantry.
Hide it. Stick it on a high shelf.
Yeah.
Put it in a hard-to-reach spot. Out of sight, out of mind.
Right. Or if I'm trying to spend less time on social media.
Delete the apps from your phone. Make it harder to access.
It sounds so simple, but I know from experience how effective it can be.
It really is. It's all about making it easier to choose the desired habit and harder to slip back into those old patterns. You're basically stacking the deck in your favor.
Okay, I am loving all this talk about habits. Any final words of wisdom from Atomic Habits before we wrap things up?
Clear leaves us with this thought, he says. What if we also got curious about the stories we tell ourselves about our habits?
The stories we tell ourselves? Okay, I think I need to hear more about this.
It's about those limiting beliefs we have that are holding us back. Those stories we play on repeat in our heads, like, oh, I'm just not good at this, or I'm going to fail anyway.
We haven't just formed habits, we've formed stories around those habits.
Exactly. And often, those stories are way more powerful than we realize. They become self-fulfilling prophecies. But the good news is,
What's the good news?
we have the power to change those stories.
Okay, so instead of saying, I'm terrible at sticking to a workout routine, I could say,
I'm the type of person who enjoys moving my body and feeling strong.
it seems like such a small shift, but I can see how it could make a huge difference in how we approach things.
Exactly. It's about rewriting the script, changing the narrative, and that, my friend, is pretty empowering.
It totally is. So there you have it. A deep dive into the power of tiny changes.
It's been a pleasure exploring Atomic Habits with you.
We've explored the science behind how habits form, the psychology of motivation, and how to make those tiny changes that lead to big results. And we even touched on something super important, those limiting beliefs that can hold us back.
Because we all have them.
We totally do, but the good news is we can change those stories. We can rewrite the script of our lives, one small change, one atomic habit at a time. And that's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep those good habits rolling.